After southern Italy was captured by Romans, formal dramatic composition began at Rome in 240 BC. Livius Andronicus, a Greek brought from Tarentum, produced a tragedy and a comedy, which were Latin adaptations of earlier Greek originals. His experiment was a success, and the practice of adapting Greek plays was quickly adopted by his contemporaries. The complex but coherent plots of Greek tragedy and comedy were unparalleled in this age. Livius Andronicus had premiered his work at the central Roman festival, the Ludi Romani, that is, the Roman Games. But soon other festivals joined the theatre fray: the Ludi Plebiae or the Plebeian Games, the Ludi Apollinaries or Games in honor of Apollo, the Ludi Megalenses or Games in honor of the Asian goddess Cybele, and others. Free entertainment for all was also sponsored at the funerals of important Romans. Thus, many doors in and around the city opened to drama, encouraging prospective playwright adapters. Among the first most successful of early Latin dramatists was Naevus Naevus. He had a wide range of subject matter. He not only freely combined more than one Greek original, but also wrote original plays on purely Roman subjects. At times, he used the stage for airing his views on contemporary politics and society. A little short of a parabasis, these episodes earned him many important enemies, and he was consequently entangled with powerful Romans. An Aristophanic tendency of Naevus was his use of gross indecency. He played an important role in accelerating the Romanization of Greek drama, a path that would lead eventually to a new and original genre of literature. No plays from Livius Andronicus and Naevus have survived, although both these dramatists composed in both genres. Yet, Livius Andronicus was most appreciated for his tragedies and Naevus for his comedies. Contrarily, their successors had a proclivity to specialize in one or the other form, as a result of which each genre of drama developed separately. Dear viewers, first truly great theatrical voice of Rome was Plautus, who is distinguished for being the earliest Roman dramatist whose work survives whole, and who is the earliest known professional playwright in Western civilization. The 20 extant plays of Plautus constitute an amazingly varied collection of good, bad, and indifferent comedies. Even the worst, however, usually have one or more effective scenes, and most of the indifferent plays were doubtlessly successful in his theatre. Nonetheless, for modern dramatists, both good and bad plays have equally served as a frequently pillaged stockroom of attention-grabbing comic characters and hilarious situations. Amphitryon, twin Minikami, braggart warrior, and pot of gold are widely adapted and fittingly demonstrate the variety of work produced by Plautus. His comedies mostly spin around daily life and average people, apparently the stuff of Greek New Comedy. However, he generates humor in a different way from Menandrian comedy. Often extreme personality types are set in peculiar situations. Plotine characters as a group summon up creations of Aristophanes more than that of Menanders. Indeed, deceitful pimps, mercenary prostitutes, lustful young and old men, tormented mothers and prosecuted wives, and most of all, shrewd slaves who delight in fraud populate the plays of Plautus. Terence stands alone among ancient dramatists because his entire corpus of work survives and is uniquely well documented. The reason must be partially the high esteem in which he was held since his own times. There is little in Terence that does not scream Menander. 4 of his 6 comedies are primarily translations of plays by this Greek master of New Comedy, and the other 2 are taken from Apollodorus of Carystus, who himself was strongly influenced by Menander. Terence held the first place among Roman writers of comedy for portrayal of character, which was clearly his main interest. For that reason, his plays are distinct for their quiet humor rather than boisterous laughter. However, effects of low comedy are also occasionally found. Like any public figure who feels constrained to defend his actions and choices, Terence evades questions, avoids issues, flatters his producers, kisses up to the public, points to his own genius, and generally acts like a politician at a press conference. On the whole, he shows a distinct preference for high comedy. Selection of subject matter in Terence, as in Menander, exhibits an extremely narrow range. Minor changes were made by Terence in the subject matter of the Greek originals. Most striking was the addition of a minor plot in The Woman of Andros, based on a young man's desire to marry a girl of good family and of unquestionable virtue. It is regrettable that this hesitant step did not lead to a serious development of decent courtship and love as a new mine of subject material. In making this addition, Terence carries out to a large extent the individualization of his new characters. Many times, as in The Brothers, he makes slight changes in the originals for the purpose of pointing out the individuality of his characters with greater precision. Still, his rendering of character lacks something of the subtlety and charm of Menander. The plots of 5 of his 6 comedies are based primarily upon a vague liaison or marriage, which in the end is stabilized. In 4 of these plays, the solution is brought about by the identification of the girl as an Attic citizen of fine family. His use of such hackneyed and highly improbable events and his dependence upon coincidence were not, of course, really compatible with his tendency towards high comedy. His plays consequently do not rise far above the mediocrity of new comedy. Most of the changes and innovations which Terence made, however, were technical ones and were designed to introduce dramatic suspense. By not revealing the general parameters of the story to follow, Terence creates tension among his viewers who are on an intellectual par with the characters. This is contrary not only to every known Menander play, but also to all Greek drama since the classical age, and thus sets the art of Terence in an entirely new mode. In this essential respect, modern theatre truly begins with him. All the same, Terence lacked in comic force. Plautus was a realistic playwright, and Terence was a sophisticated man of letters. Plautus dealt freely with the works of the Greek dramatists for amusing his audience by bold buffoonery, while Terence sought to give a high literary polish to Greek plays, knowing that they were to be acted before an audience incompetent of appreciating either elegance or grace. Plautus indirectly gives us information about the lives of the Roman populace. Terence chiefly preserves for us in his scholarly translations some of the best comedies by Menander. It is no wonder that the comedies of the later writer failed. He lacked the instinct of the born dramatist who could feel the pulse of his generation. Terence was finally cherished in the Italian Renaissance by an assembly of cultivated scholars abundantly capable of appreciating his refinement. Dear students, some stock characters used in Roman comedy are as follows. The young, rich, love-struck and coward hero is the adolescence. He tends to grumble about his fate and requires backup. His father is often the senex or old man whom he fears but does not respect. He wears a dark wig and his clothes are usually crimson. There are many incarnations of senex. As the father, he is either too strict or too soft, but genuinely loves his son. As lover, he embarrasses his son, his slave, and his wife. He tends to be passionately in love with the same woman as his son, who is much too young. He never gets the girl and is often dragged off by his enraged wife. Sometimes he is a friend of the family who helps the adolescents. He is often a miser who wears a straight undergarment with long doubled sleeves. He sometimes carries a staff. The Lino runs the brothel. The loved one of the adolescence may be owned by the Lino, and she may work at his brothel. So, the adolescence is often forced to deal with him. He is unabashedly immoral and is only interested in money. He dresses in a tunic and mantle and is often bald. He always carries a money bag. The braggart soldier is called Miles Gloriosus. He is an especially familiar character today. He loves himself more than anything else and sees himself as handsome and brave, while in reality he is very stupid, cowardly and gullible. He may be interested in the same girl as the adolescents. He wears a tunic with long sleeves and has wavy hair. The parasitus or parasite lives only for his own self. He is often seen begging meals or being refused. He lies for his own gain. He dresses in a long black or grey garment with long doubled sleeves. The servi or slaves take up about half of the cast and often have the maximum monologues. They are not the toilers typical of a real Roman home. The servus calidus or clever slave is always talkative, but his other traits differ. Most of the time he is loyal, more so to the adolescents than to the cynics. He brings tricks and comedy to the plot and tends to drive it. He often finds the truth out at the end of the play. He can be identified by his tendency to use alliteration and meter in his speech. The servi wears tunics and hold or carry scarves. The ancilla is a maid or nurse of no particular age. She is a minor character used to move the plot by presenting information or helping to develop another character. She is a tool of her mistress and may be used as a messenger. The meretrix or the prostitute is either a mercenary or loyal. The first type is older or more experienced and has seen a lot. The second type is truly in love with the adolescents. Both are very attractive with a complex hairdo and outfit, which is yellow. She also wears a mantle. The matrona, mother, mulier, woman, or axa, wife, is shrewd. She loves her children, but is temperamental towards her husband. She does not necessarily have to be a devoted wife, but sometimes she is. She wears a long garment with flowing sleeves and a mantle. The Virgo or the young maiden is the love interest of the adolescents. She is beautiful and virtuous, but does not get much stage time. She is treated as a prize. As far as Roman tragedy is concerned, none survives from early times, although historians do mention 3 early tragedians, namely Quintus Annius, Marcus Pacuvius, and Lucius Accius. Since the time of the empire, the works of two tragedians have survived. One is an unknown author, while the other is the Stoic philosopher Seneca. 9 of Seneca's tragedies survive, all of which are fabula crepidata, or tragedies adapted from Greek originals. The leap from Greek tragedy to Seneca is one of almost 500 eventful years, during which enormous changes were made. Seneca wrote philosophical tragedy, not designed for production in the theatre. It is familiar ground when one turns from the extant Greek plays to Seneca's tragedies. The same old subject material is being contemplated once more. Oedipus and Agamemnon still stomp across the stage. The comparison of Seneca's plays with the very best Greek masterpieces is likely to obscure more than it reveals. It was not Seneca's purpose to imitate the Greeks of the 5th century. Though his plays are not masterpieces judged by any standard, his strong personality has definitely left its impression on them, and they are thoroughly Roman productions. Friends, the primary purpose why Seneca wrote tragedies can be determined from his tragedies itself, from his other writings, and perhaps from the knowledge of his life. Seneca was not a practical man of the theatre. He forfeited the perfection of the artistic whole to his special interests, which were sometimes incompatible with dramatic effectiveness. This was a typical vice which he shared with many in a nervous and intellectually chaotic age. Seneca was interested in pedantry. He was inordinately fond of detailed geographical descriptions. The Romans of his day had conquered a far larger world than any previous people, and they were conscious and justifiably proud of this. Even now, it is thrilling to read Seneca's references to the Antipodes or his prediction of the discovery of America in the media. Such a bold stretch of the human imagination is undeniably admirable. His detailed catalogue of the districts of Attica at the opening of the Phaedra, however, must have been almost as boring to the Roman as it is to the modern reader. Many other catalogues are equally so, as are his lists of hunting dogs and his series of rare wild animals. The mythological lore in his plays requires a far more detailed knowledge of Greek legends than the Greek tragedies do. Seneca's tragedies consistently achieved rhetorical display, brilliant sophistic argument, arresting epigrammatic point, vivid description of sensational events. These highly prized qualities of his day he undeniably achieved. It is often concluded, therefore, that his tragedies were designed merely as a vehicle for rhetorical display, and that they were written not for actual production, but for reading or recitation. There is no external proof that any of his plays were ever produced. The plays of Seneca sadly lack in dramatic action. He ignores motivation of entrances and exits, realistic dialogue, preparation for subsequent events, and the various other details of technique which the Greek masters had developed to perfection. His plays tend to seem collection of scenes rather than dramatically articulated units. The characters are often incredibly or desultorily presented. Unity of subject seems to be violated by apparently extraneous material, and the plays usually open on such a shrill note of horror that no opportunity remains for an effective reversal of fortune. All this is done to prove a rhetorical point. During the time of Seneca, when the oppression of the emperors made open criticism of political policies extremely dangerous, all genres of literature were used for concealed criticism. Thus, Seneca too seems to have a political purpose in writing his tragedies. Inextricably bound up with it are his moral and philosophical interests. Interpreted as expressions of his intellectual tendencies, the tragedies of Seneca are successful productions. The author was a grave thinker and a powerful writer despite his many faults. Friends, Seneca was not a great dramatist, and he did not pretend to be one, but his plays have certain dramatic virtues and historical importance. Largely neglected in ancient and in medieval times, these emerged in the 14th century as the only well-known classical tragedies, and their influence over Italian and French drama continued for many centuries. In Shakespeare's day too, they were immensely popular. Thank you.